Yeah. So as you guys all know or probably heard, a16z is a venture firm, and they've backed numerous successful companies that we all know of and heard of, like Airbnb, Instagram, CeeLo, and they just recently invested in Flow. Um, and the reason why this is so controversial is because it's um, it's ran by the ex-founder of WeWork, Adam Neumann. And this is A16z's biggest check that they've ever written. So I kind of wanted to start a conversation on flow, what it is, and like what you guys think of this investment that they've made. Would anyone like to speak?
Yeah, I guess I can start. I just looked into this a little bit in light of the spaces, and I think it's wild because, to be honest, I mean, I guess this is what everyone is saying, but it sounds exactly like a copy of WeLive. Plus, it sounds like they're going to be trying to wedge in some Web3 in there, maybe use a couple buzzwords. But all in all, I don't think this is the $1 billion valuation is really justified. I think this is like a copy of what happened with WeWork, and Neumann must be really, really charismatic and a hell of a great salesman, and have some really great power on the guys in Silicon Valley for having made this happen, with the exact same narrative as We Live, which clearly didn't really work.
Right. Um, I completely agree. I've done some research on this, and I still kind of don't really understand the concept of what exactly he's still trying to do and how blockchain ties into this. So I know there's like very little information of what's already out there, but I was wondering if anyone fully understand what he's actually trying to build, because it kind of seems all over the place.
Well, I mean, from they haven't really been super clear about what they're planning on doing with this. Just from like a little bit of research, I saw that it has something to do with like it sounds like they're going to be doing some kind of real estate building or real estate investments, or creating these co-living spaces that are really, really cool, and finding a way, I guess, there's like a lot of different little components that they're throwing at this. It looks like, I read somewhere that there's going to be some crypto trading services somewhere in there. They want to redefine the way that people own their homes, or like making renters be able to own their homes somehow. It really sounds like they're throwing a lot of different concepts at the wall and hoping that the whole jumble of utopian idea, kind of, well, I mean, they don't have to hope. They got the investment, so it looks like it worked. But yeah, in my head, it's just going to be some really hyped co-living space with some type of special, I don't know, way for someone to rent. And maybe if they rent in that unit long enough, they can somehow earn the right to own it, or I don't know what, something like this.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know they were creating Flow Wallet, but I didn't understand how that would actually work with like the co-living space, because you can't pay for the co-living space with tokens. Um, I think like it's more of like kind of like a reward system. So yeah, I don't really see this working, but um, it
We're
it
very
sounds.
bearish in this Twitter space about this investment, clearly.
Yeah, it sounds. I mean, if it does, I mean that sounds cool, I guess. Um, does anyone? What does anyone else? Tado, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I'll I'll be devil's advocate. I'll take the other side.
Okay.
Um, I mean, there's one thing. It's like all publicity is good publicity. We all know Newman for better or for worse. So I think that carries a lot of value to it. He did fail spectacularly, um, but he did also upend the way that co-works are run. Like I think before WeWork, there was probably Regus and a couple other like boring, difficult to access office space rentals. And after WeWork, there's been this kind of an explosion of co-working spaces all around the world. So did this company was a financial success? Maybe not. Did he change an industry? I think so. So again, also something to note, a16z VCs are basically put money in big gambles. So even if most of of their investments don't work, but at least one of them works, like they're good. So also, just because they are putting money in there doesn't mean that this will be a great success. There's a lot of uncertainty, and that's also what they're banking on. Um, the thesis makes sense. It's very difficult to afford even renting a house, much less even owning one. So it's like, how do you create a system where you allow that to happen? Hopefully they figure a way. It'd be great. Also, essentially what they're kind of running, and hopefully they don't end up doing this. When I read their pitch, is basically create is basically you able to rent a room and then everything else is shared spaces. I think for some people it makes a lot of sense, and more with remote work and people wanting to move around for quite a bit. So how do you move around without while creating equity? Because renters don't create equity because all the money goes into rental. You would need to buy a house through a mortgage to actually be accruing equity. But that also means that you're fixed to a single physical location. Uh, how how can you combine both those things? So maybe that's where the wallet and the let's say the more the blockchain side of things come into play is how do you ascribe ownership to an individual without really needing to follow them around the world? So they can show, let's say you and I go to different WeLive locations and we spend the next 5 years living in several one of them. It'd be great if we can create equity through that. I mean, that would be super powerful, to be honest. And I actually like it could actually upend the way that we look at ownership. Right now, it's like it's one big bang. Like you have to either buy the entire house, and there's banks that will give you a loan to help you out, but you essentially have to buy it outright. How can you buy a property bit by bit? So I think that would be a very interesting challenge.
I think so I agree. I think this would be great. I personally am pretty much a nomad and I kind of live a little bit everywhere. And I would love for some type of system like this to happen or to exist where I mean, it's not really geared towards people like me. They're saying that they want to fix housing availability. So I guess like there's different ways directions that this could go, but I do really like the idea of a co-living space where you can pick up from one place, live in one place a little bit, live in another place a bit. I don't know, there's again different ways this could go. I think the issue here is that he's notoriously a really bad I don't know what the exact word is for this right now, executioner. He's notorious he's notorious for not making good decisions, spending too much money, and just, like kind of leading the company in all types of directions. So I think this is where a lot of the concern is coming with this investment. I think we'd all love this type of co-living, utopian co-living space to exist, but we just don't believe that Neumann can really make it happen.
Yeah, I agree with those points, and thank you for sharing more insight on that too. Um, I guess um, I guess what one thing I've been thinking of is like what to. I'm sorry to be pessimistic here, but what does it look like for Web3 in general if this was to not work out? do you think it kind of like puts a bad light on what we're currently on actual on people who are actually trying to build and raise money, or what what are your thoughts?
I guess it depends on how they're gonna wedge Web3 into this. I mean, as long as people don't get rugged, I don't see a huge negative downfall on Web3 if he doesn't manage to make this happen. If anything, I feel like it'll just make Web3 and the application of Web3 into our like everyday lives and everyday use cases less attainable. So people will just think that it's not as possible, or they might just, think it's too complicated to even bother with. But yeah, I don't see like huge downfalls from this. What do you think, today?
Uh, yeah, no, I actually only see positives because they're not really building any infrastructure play in Web3 or any tooling that other people will depend on. It'll be more of like using other people's tooling to enable their use case. Um, so in the scenario where this works, it's a great use of Web3 technology in the real world, let's say, that's always been a big topic of conversation, and will probably be for the next few years. And if they fail, again, it won't. I don't see a negative impact on the industry just because of a single use case of what I can assume it's tokenomics might play out.
Well, I guess what we can hope for is that they help onboard more people into crypto. That would be great if at least that happens.
Yeah, exactly. It's again going back to the all publicity is good publicity.
And what are your thoughts on I guess a lot of people feel and granted a lot of people aren't happy with this investment, especially a lot of founders feel feel like, you know, Adam Adam Newman is either lucky or just very charismatic, and he doesn't deserve to have this type of funding.
I like, as much as I want to be like, yeah, Newman doesn't deserve this. What did he do? All he did was fail up. At the end of the day, getting investment is, and I guess starting a company is all about making it happen. And Newman is the guy that managed to make $350 million happen for his project. So, I mean, it's easy to want to hate on the guy and call him lucky and whatever. Obviously, luck is involved. Obviously, he has privileges that some other founders might not have, um, because of where he was born or whatever. But like, he managed to make it happen, right?
Yeah, agreed. But I mean, with his track record, I feel like there's a lot of founders out there, or people who are just trying to build, but aren't able to receive these kind of funding. So I kind of understand.
I would even take it as a lesson. As like if a person that has failed so spectacularly can still get invested, what are they doing right? What are the things that you can learn from them that even in the face of again how because from the outside it looks like it's crazy that that he's been able to raise again. But then if you show me someone with an experience of having raised and run a, I think they raised around like 20 billion at some point,
I think
WeWork.
47 billion. No, maybe not raised. Sorry, I'm throwing numbers here, but they were
Yeah,
valued at 47 billion.
yeah,
Yeah, there we go. So valued at 47 billion, probably raised about half or maybe a third of that. That still takes quite a lot of skills. And being charismatic, it's genetic, but it's also a skill. I think it's tremendously important. Um, So, I mean, kudos to him. Great work. And from a funder perspective that is struggling and gets to see this and feels like it's not, he doesn't deserve it. Unfortunately, all this is we build on a system that it's not about what you deserve, it's more what you're able to obtain. So with the tools that you have right now and the tools that he has, figure out how you can raise. You can raise saying like I'm the next Neumann, for example. I'll fail spectacular, I'll make you famous, and then I'll ask you for more money the next time. Like something related to him is that he I think it was last year at some point he wanted to raise a company, create more a Web3 product related to carbon credits, and he raised I think 70 million from a16z's at that point. Um, and then he seems to have pivoted all straight away into another industry and has the same VC backing him and with even more money. That means that he's a great communicator. He's able to explain his ideas and his thought process to a group of intelligent people that agree and are willing to take a chance on him.
Actually, I just watched the V Crash. It tells the story about how the WeWork is funded and finally went into bankruptcy. I think Newman is definitely a very ambitious guy. He do this out of the love, I think, for because of his good heart. But I just wondering how the NFT can change the real estate world, because the business model of WeWork just doesn't work at all. Then if Newman want to like introduce the NFT technology into or blockchain technology into the real estate industry, how that can change the whole thing? Like, what's the disruptance?
I
Hey,
mean,
Josh. Oh,
yeah, go
sorry,
ahead,
go on.
Tito.
I don't think necessarily it's more about how can they, through this application, disrupt, let's say, Web3 or NFT technology. It's more of how they can grab this new novel technology that we work in, and how they can apply it successfully to a use case in real estate. Again, it doesn't need to revolutionize in too many things. As long as it's a positive change, introduces new ways of interacting and within this ecosystem. I think that's great, and it can be as simple as instead of having a key, you have a login, a digital login, for example. Again, it doesn't need to be big outlandish things. As long as it provides value to users, um, that's perfectly fine. Actually, a success. That would be considered a success in my book.
Yeah, and realistically, I mean, I believe that this is more of a. It's great that he's exploring ways to use the blockchain to help revolutionize real estate. But again, I realistically think that a lot of this has to do with sales, and a lot of this has to do with trying to make his project look more valuable. When in reality, because it's easy to flash Web3 buzzwords around with a project and make it look super exciting. I think that's a little bit of what's happening here right now. But you're right, Tadeo. If he does manage to find a way to improve, the industry with blockchain, great for him. And well, for us too, I guess.
Yeah, I'm excited to see kind of how this pans out. And I guess one question that everyone's asking is if you think this could somehow save the housing crisis, which I think he's been trying to do for a while with WeWork and like all his other projects. What do you think um, about this one specifically that makes it different from the others?
I mean, you mean what makes Flow different than WeLive?
Yeah.
Are you going to speak to that?
Oh, sorry. Um, I don't think it needs to be different. I think there's one big thing which is focus. This is WeLive is not part of the WeWork organization, or so a lot of the time do too many projects at the same time. In this case, we are running on the assumption that they will only focus on this specific use case, right? Of how you can like upend residential living into more atomic living spaces. That for me, that's already big enough of a change. Like they won't try to be doing deliveries or co-working spaces or separate experiments. So that should kind of create an organization that every human in there is focused on that specific, like solving that specific challenge.
Interesting. Thanks for adding that. Is there anyone here who would also like to jump in to say something? Charlene, do you have anything to add?
Okay, just see the real lady Cheryl is requesting the mic, so I'm passing the mic to her.
Okay. Hi.
Great space. I was just listening to some of the topics you're discussing and some of the points being raised. I've heard sort of highlights, but I haven't sort of delved deep into WeLive and what it's going to do. As someone in Web3, in my view, I think there's almost two considerations. The first is for the industry. So I think that the money going into this space and someone actually utilizing it in this use case or for this use case is really awesome, because a lot of people don't really get Web3 and they don't really understand the use cases. And I think that during this sort of building out phase, I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that we'll discover about the actual utility, or at least the extent to which Web3 can facilitate real world living, for example, scenarios, right? It doesn't even matter whether it succeeds or fails. The point is that we'll learn from it. I mean, MySpace didn't succeed, but we learned that we could build social media networks, and we've gone from strength to strength with respect to that in Web2. So there's the sort of like industry effect, and there's the human effect, like the person itself. I also feel that just because someone's failed in the past doesn't mean they're going to fail all the time. I actually think it's a strength because they should have learned what works and what doesn't work. And I'm sure that he's gone on a personal journey. So I actually prefer someone who's got experience and failed and is prepared to try again, especially someone that, if a16z, whom I believe to be super intelligent, and they've done really well in terms of where they put money in him, and they see his vision. I think, well, yeah, good. I think it's great. It doesn't matter whether it fails or not. What matters is what we learn and how it moves the space forward. So I'm really excited for it.
Oh, quick note from Tadeo, by the way. He has the meeting starting actually right now, so he had to hop out.
Of course.
But he says bye.
Bye. Oh, I think Bettina here is, Bettina, you can take the mic. And thanks, Shelly, for adding your input.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hi, Bettina.
How you doing? Someone said it's about luck with Adam. It's not so much luck. I mean, he was able to, procure over 4,000 apartments that is now valued at $1 billion. It's not an easy feat to get 4,000 apartments across how many states, So that's one. So for him to do that, it required capital of some sort. And from what I understand, his brother-in-law, who was once COO of WeWork, is involved. It's kind of tied to Flow as well. May have helped him. And so I think that should be considered in his family is one thing, is another thing. So class is a major thing. So, and also his name is a big thing because, yes, um, bad publicity is good publicity. So he may have failed before. It wasn't a failure. It was, I know the story behind a little bit of the story because um, I guess it's, most people had seen the series and all of that, but it was basically, you know, Adam wanting WeWork to be in every corner because originally it was going to be something small, something nimble, but it's the whole, as they all say, as we have heard, you don't build too fast, and Adam built too fast. And that was one of the issues. The issues was he was not focusing on what he currently built at that moment and focus on the investors he had at the moment. And then he just kept continuing to like build, build, build. Starbucks did that in the very beginning because that's what Adam said. And I would hear it from a very close source of it that said Adam wanted to be Starbucks, of real estate, of tech, at every corner. And and Starbucks had to pull back themselves um, in late, I mean, like around like after 2008ish, later on a few years ago, where they realized they were growing too fast. They needed to go back to what they needed to do. And so raising money for Adam is not hard. As someone said, he is very charismatic. I've never not heard that Adam is not charismatic. He is charismatic. Um, Being a founder in raising money is very different from being a CEO. That's the biggest mistake many make. Meaning like they seem to think that it's the same thing when it's not. Operating a business is a whole other beast. Founding a business, raising money, you can do a great job at it, but how do you manage people? How do you manage day to day? How do you bring out the vision? How do you ensure, the financials and the right people are helping you? And so that is really what needs to be considered. And so Adam has these goals, these massive goals, and it's great, but it's also can be detrimental to others. So the idea that he's going into the real estate industry, it scares me because you also have to understand that right now there is this push of you know um, own nothing and be happy. And, that's been the agenda for the last couple of years. And this whole idea of not trying to get people to invest in, land and property and building for themselves, but renting and trying to get into this lock deal of flow is just a little bit sketchy to me. And, I think everyone should be mindful of that. And the whole Web3 is just marketing. He doesn't know anything about Web3. Most of these celebrities, most of these guys, most of those in the class don't even know what it is. They don't know what they're selling. And so I would tell anyone to caution, err on the side of caution, and just take everything in the media, what they are saying, with a grain of salt. And I wouldn't be surprised there's a whole other sketchy thing that's behind this whole flow thing, because you'd be surprised what some of these deals are, and when it really comes down to it's just a sketchy, thing that you don't want to be even involved in. So that's what I'm about to say. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Bettina. I agree that the whole wallets Web3 addition to Flow. Sounds like it's more marketing than anything. Like I said, there's not much information out there to see what they're actually trying to do. So I'm really interested to see how this pans out. I think Sheldon wants to speak.
Yeah, I just want to agree that as a solution engineer, this is silly. The idea that you can solve a macroeconomic problem by bolting on something as simple as private key management or, whatever the wallet is supposed to do or represent, it's nonsensical. I'll reserve some of my opinions about Adam because I'm not a fan, and especially charismatic founders who have a history of failing up. Personally, I'm not about it. But more importantly, WeLive went under investigation for not really doing their sort of paperwork right. And I just went to their site and had a look, and they're looking at $400 a night for a studio space. So this just smells like Airbnb on crack to me, and it's the kind of thing that I'm frustrated to see the label Web3 or even a16z associated with, because this is not the kind of thing that pushes the space forward, but it is the kind of carrot dangling that makes people excited that that's possible. Systemic problems are a really big source of culture in crypto, and I think that's great and necessary, but dangling the idea that you can solve, a really significant wide-scale crisis with one company becoming the Starbucks in every corner, like I thought that, years ago this would be laughed out of the room, and maybe it's just different people in the room now, but I think this is just unproductive, and I don't understand a16z's move on this except to think that they can get some, revenue or attention out of it. A16z is a great organization, personally a fan, but this is concerning, not just because of Adam's history and because of the sort of charisma before substance kind of thing, but because the actual product and the history of executing this is based on just being Aaron B with a twist. And I'm really failing to see the value here, and I'm just frustrated by the, sort of extortion of buzzwords which make them so valueless and hard to use, because Web3 is still a, not really well-defined concept. I try to define it as read, write, execute, or that the people who operate on a platform share ownership with it. But this is so far away removed from that. I mean, even if I have the ability to share equity in some automated manner on Airbnbs, that's not a significant benefit because I can't share equity and revenue generation. That's something that's been like blocked forever because of old school equity regulation. So I'm just I'm not seeing a place where new value can be tokenized. I'm not seeing a place where a technology can make this crisis make more sense. And like Bettina was saying, this is, I think that, I mean, maybe I'm speaking for her just a little bit. I don't mean to, but this idea of, hey, I have a great concept. I want to take over a market, or I want to become the dominant market share of a certain thing. It has to come with a ridiculous amount of money being willing to go into the red to take over that market share, and B, some level of misunderstanding about feasibility, about problems that are going to be run into, just about the way these things work on a economic level, whether you disagree with any economist or agree with them, I don't care. Just, at some level, solving a country or a world's housing crisis does not come down to offering overpriced Airbnbs. Yeah, so thanks for letting me ramble about that. But yeah, this is just a little frustrating.
Thank you, Sheldon. I think I'm more on. Um, I agree with more on your points than I think other speakers are saying. Well, just because Adam has failed with other projects doesn't mean that he gets he should that should be held against him for other future
Yeah,
projects. But
yeah. Pause on the word deserve, but like the value proposition here is nonsense. You know.
right.
I will
And
love to. Oh, sorry. I
sorry, go
just
ahead,
want to.
Bettina.
Sheldon, you are absolutely right. One of the things is while a16z is a great, knows how to invest and all of that. If Adam fails, they get everything. So you also have to know, I don't know if everyone has been focusing on quite a number of investment firms have been buying houses throughout North America. And so there is this rush of trying to get the most important ones in this country. And so it's all part of that scheme. And I think people should be taking close watch on these investment firms. BlackRock has been buying up those homes to build up these portfolio of homes, and it's part of that. And so and I just see that X16Z is getting on the bandwagon, with this. And so same with Adam selling that idea to them. And Adam failing, you have to understand he has a support system, and his support, it wasn't his money per se. As the old saying goes in investing, you know, trying to get capital, you use other people's money, and that's what he did. And so he used investors' money to do what he needed to do, and he is always going to get bailed out in some way, shape, or form. And so while WeWork had failed, he was still on the payroll. He was still, doing all he can to stay active with soft. I forgot the name again, but just it is ridiculous. And so I don't think anyone should look to Adam for to basically no one should be admiring him because again, this is not how you build. You build steadily, scalable, and in sustainable. Adam is again passionate. I get his passion. I understand, but a lot of people got hurt, and for anyone to be like, oh, we can learn from this, come on, that's just completely ridiculous. And so a lot of people are going to get hurt from this if this thing goes through.
Thanks, Bettina. Karina, do you have anything to add to this?
Well, I mean, for me, the biggest red flag is just the fact that the whole use of buzzwords here. I mean, I from my little exposure to crypto, I've been working in the space for about 8 months. I've discovered some projects that are exactly that. They're like Web 2, and they're trying to wedge in some Web 3 buzzwords. The founders are trying to find a way to justify, the fact that they raised a token, and the fact that they decided to raise the token to be able to start the project. And I agree with the fact that this type of behavior hurts people. It hurts those who get involved, who invest, and it's not that good for the space. So that's why I'm a little bearish on this whole idea of investing in WeLive, although I would love this type of concept to exist. So yeah, I definitely agree with the things that Sheldon and Bettina are saying here. And I would just love for crypto concepts to stop being used as like a great way to get advertise as a great way to advertise your project, or as a great way to try to justify a higher valuation for your project.
I want to ask you, why do you like about what do you like about this idea of what he's trying to do?
Well, it's not necessarily about what he's trying to do, but just the idea of a co-living space. I mean, he does have a point of the fact that more people are, especially all of us, working from home, or those who are choosing to work from home and not go back to the office, and just the fact that we all don't really need to interact with each other in a physical manner as much anymore. He does touch on a point that a lot of us are looking for more social interactions, and there could be something done here to disrupt this. I mean, if you look at the way, for example, when you're in Europe, there's all these terraces outside and everyone's sitting outside and kind of interacting with each other. But maybe in North America, this isn't as much of these types of spaces don't exist as much. You have to drive from one restaurant to another, from your house to a place. It's not, there aren't as many places for people to co-live. And this does affect people negatively. And a lot of people, especially from the pandemic, are searching, for ways to connect and feel a little disconnected with others. So I would love, I have lived in buildings with a lot of amenities, a lot of like co-living spaces, and I thought it was super cool. And I think there could be something done for this, but definitely not with the use of blockchain, not with the use of technology. This is something for, really creative architecture, really creative engineers to come in and do something about this, not not blockchain.
Well, in Europe, the reason you're able to see that is also you have to understand that um, the way the United States and Europe is very totally different because, like in Berlin, rent is protected. You can't go and state you're going to hike up the rent, 300%, 500%, like out of the blue and do whatever you want. What he's selling for what, 400, $800, for, I
Yeah.
forgot what it's that's unheard of in Europe unless you're in the wealthy parts in Monaco. I'm always in Europe, and these things are not. Basically, it's what he's selling is capitalist, ideal, but that would not sell in Europe. And so in Europe, Europeans do value quality, value friendship, value relationships. But what they don't value is they don't value the money like that. They one of those people that are not going to be all hard boiled about like, hey, I mean, I'm going to spend 800 for co-living space with a bunch of people. Come on now. I have stayed at co-living space, not for that amount, for less than like 10 euros. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but I'm not paying 800. And we were working together and filming together. We did things together, but not for 800. I would rather, Nomad Capitalist is a great person who talks about instead of he used his money to buy a mansion, he bought little tiny homes in different cities, and then he basically Airbnbs it and stuff like that. But I think that's much more wiser to do that. Start, investing. I want to invest in my own place. I don't know if I want to go and be giving my $800 to someone in a co-living space. It's ridiculous. I just think it's ridiculous.
I agree. No, there's definitely other ways that can be other than humans of going about this. I agree. $400 or even $800 a day is insane for that price. Like you can get a fantastic hotel room and go to the hotel rooftop pool and have the same experience. But it would still. I do still believe, and obviously this isn't for everyone. Some people love their peace and quiet. They don't want to interact with others, but I still do believe that it would be fantastic for some type of innovation to exist in terms of living spaces. Again, something for architects to address, not technology.
Yeah, and I think especially with us who work from home and who work in the Web3 space and move around a lot, we're always looking to find meet people in different countries and different cities. So having a co-working space for specific communities would also be pretty neat. I think there's already projects out there, Web3 projects or Web3 groups that are trying to create co-living spaces that are probably a much better idea than Newman's.
Here's another thing. I know in Europe, a friend of mine has been traveling with her family, and she's been staying at farms, and they quasi co-living space in farming. They teach everyone how to farm. They farm their own food and everything. I think that's one of the things that people need to learn. I think the focus has been so much on tech. Now we're losing grasp on nature and things like that. So I could see maybe a co-living space where people learn how to farm, people learn how to make their own food. I mean, after this pandemic, we saw that people don't have space. I live in New York, and so we're all cramped in our apartments. And so now people are starting to realize they do need, to be out with nature. They do need some vitamin D and sun and all of that. And so we need to start thinking less, I love tech, but less tech, more things that are just simpler and not be so I'm a capitalist girl. We live in that society, but just not uber capitalist. $800.
Yes, totally agree. I think Lucy and UGX want to say something.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, co-living is nothing new. Student living is kind of that in a sense, but um, I think they definitely the price is ridiculous. I think even someone with the ability to afford it still wouldn't pay 400 a night unless you can like give me like real life tangibles that I'm walking away with. But I think that they're, as usual, they're forgetting about the places that probably really need these things like Africa, like some of these, more developing countries that could, you know, this can propel them. I think they're focusing within, the communities that definitely, could benefit from it, but not benefit from it in the way that I think that they're looking at. Uh, yeah, $400 a night is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard in my entire life. Yeah, like you said, you can literally get an amazing hotel for 400 a night. So I'm just trying to see what they're doing with it. I know that he had a counterpart that actually had an idea that was a black guy. I forgot his name. But obviously they funded him instead. Um, yeah, and I don't know what, yeah, everything that you guys were saying as far as like the price is what throws me off the most. And even you can't share equity with it, depending on the laws. But it kind of reminds me of it, if you're trying to disrupt, it kind of reminds me of the whole taxi situation. How there was a lot of laws behind the taxi situation, and with Uber and Lyft, technology was able to get around it. So I don't necessarily think it's a technology versus architect versus engineer thing. I think all of us are going to end up being in the same spaces working together. um, but yeah, and like I think the one way technology can help with the co-living and the Web3 can help with the co-living is you still don't necessarily have to physically be there. You can still have that connection, have that web, have that, feel like that area is a home, and it can more act of as a hub for some of these like co-living communities in a sense. But just depending on what they do with it, I doubt that they have that much sauce. But we'll see.
Lucy, did you want to add to this?
Sure. So I kind of wish this was like a descriptor for every single discussion around all these startup companies, that VCs don't care if one of their investments fails. Like it's a shotgun approach. It's a scatter shot across the market sector itself. They'll make a bunch of investments. A lot of them fail. They don't care because the ones that do will pay out 20 or 30 times over, and that affords them to take a lot of risk. That's why they do venture capital, not safe, low return, low risk capital stuff. So that's one thing I'd add. And the other thing I would say is that it's really suspect when you're stacking a bunch of market sectors that are famously unregulated, like carbon credits, real estate, blockchain. It's stupid to consider any of that. Like those are all famously deregulated. The idea that more capitalism going into the housing market is going to like help anybody except the company trying to get value capture. That's probably not going to happen. It's probably not good for like regular people. Yeah, it's obvious. Yeah.
Great points. I actually didn't really think of it that way. I think we're wrapping up soon, though. I think we've kind of concluded that Adam Newman is probably not going to help us solve any type of housing crisis based on what everyone contributed to this space. I'm wondering if anyone wants to say anything else before we drop. Okay. Thank you guys so much for joining. We're going to be hosting this space regularly each week, and it's just going to be based on what's currently trending in Web3 and in tech. So please join us again next week. It'll probably be the same time or a different day on Tuesday or Thursday. I think one more person wants to talk. So, Jason, did you want to say something before we drop?
Sure. Just wanted to share a thread that I read yesterday. It was someone who did an analysis into Adam's personal investments in the past few years, and he found three property-related companies. One is a company that helps renters to turn their rental payments into a down payment to the property, and you also build up your credit in the process. Another company is a property management one, and there was a third one that's an online property marketplace. So that person in the thread, he was analyzing that with Flow, Adam's angle was probably combining the companies he acquired and turning them into a more seamless experience for renters where you can rent any Flow property online across cities and countries. You can move quite freely between those. And when you pay rent, you also build up your credit and also a down payment for that property. So that may be the angle he's coming from. I don't think it will be too Web3 or crypto related. I think the crypto part in the patent application, there is a mention that about trading carbon credits. But I think that's probably maybe there's some carbon neutral buildings where he can save some carbon credits and trade on Flow Carbon. But I think that's probably as far as the Web3 and crypto part goes. I think it's going to be more about having an integrated rental experience that's better than what we have currently. And from a16z's perspective, as long as Adam can go public successfully, then a16z is gonna make good return from their investment. And Adam is probably like one of the best salesmen alive now, so I think he can. I'm pretty sure he can do that, go public quite successfully. I think that's the angle.
Great. Thank you so much for your contribution.